And a week or two ago, we talked about how the Supreme Court opened the door for customers to sue Apple on antitrust grounds, given that the App Store is very locked down and restrictive on the iOS platform. And this week, Apple put up a website dedicated to that topic, and it goes into a lot of depth and detail about why they think their App Store is not anti-competitive. And as you browse through this page, you'll see some examples that Apple has used in the past about why and how they welcome competition. They talk about how they distribute billions of downloads of their competitors' apps, for example, and how it's such an open ecosystem. And they also talks about how they focused on quality over quantity, and they do some degree of curation here to ensure that Apple customers are protected when they are buying apps from Apple. Apple also showed a number of examples of competing apps that they allow for sale on their platform. They use some examples like the Apple Calendar and alternatives that are available on the App Store from competitors, including, of course, Google Calendar and Outlook and Fantastical here. However, what they don't say is that Apple benefits from all of those competing apps because they make money on their competitors' work. 30% of every app sale goes to Apple, and that's been the foundation of the lawsuits that were brought, saying that consumers are being disadvantaged by having this 30% fee built into the cost of what they are buying, and there's no alternative to buy those apps elsewhere. On the Android platform, for example, you could install the Amazon App Store and buy your apps through Amazon, or you could buy them through Google. On the Mac, for example, you can download an app directly from a developer and install it, and Apple doesn't take a cut of that. So there are alternatives on other platforms, but it looks like, really for the most part, with maybe the exception of the Xbox, there are not really any other options for acquiring software on an Apple tablet or phone. You have to use the App Store, and as such, 30% of your purchase is going back to Apple. So even though these competitors are competing, they still have to pay Apple, who benefits from all of that competition monetarily and really has no loss at all if their competitor's app gets more popular than their own. And they also bring up some other examples like ebook readers. In this case, they're pointing to Amazon Kindle and Audible, where you can download the app for free and get access to content that you purchased elsewhere available through that app without Apple taking a cut of it. However, Apple puts in so much friction here, I don't think this argument holds up all that well. So take a look here at the Apple book reader. If you go into their book reader here and start browsing some of the latest books, when you click on something, you can buy it right through the app. It is ready to go. In fact, if you got Apple Pay, you don't even have to do much to get that purchase made. You can just do your fingerprint scan and boom, you've got your book. It's downloading and you are off and running. On the Kindle app on the iPhone, if you go in and find a book as you're browsing around that you really want to read, you can't download it. You can get a free sample delivered to you, but you can't even get a link to buy the book itself. You have to jump out of there and go into the web browser and look around. And the reason is that Apple restricts people from linking to places where people can buy things. They restrict companies from selling anything in the app as well that's not an in-app purchase that Apple can profit from. So there's really no way here that a consumer through the app can get similar functionality and buy that book from Amazon versus Apple. They have to jump out to their web browser, purchase it on the browser, and then go back into the app to read it. And I think that's a lot of friction for a lot of consumers. And if they are looking at the book costing the same on both platforms, they're probably going to go to the one that's easier to access. And right now, Apple has a competitive advantage over every other book reader on the Apple App Store because only Apple can sell you that book directly in the app. Likewise, if we go over to the Android version of Kindle, we can see a book there that I want to take a look at. I can click on it and buy it and get it downloaded right to my device right inside of the Android app, and I don't have any friction there. So really, there's an example, I think, of where Apple is exercising the fact that it owns the platform to give themselves a competitive advantage here. Yes, they are distributing the apps, no problem. I think they would be under a lot of scrutiny if they weren't, but they have put in a lot of friction for those competitors to compete equally, and I think that ultimately is a real flaw in their argument and might be something they could be vulnerable for if any of these lawsuits come forward. But the big question here is whether or not Apple is a monopoly. The answer is probably not, because Apple in 2018, the last quarter, had about 47% of the smartphone market share here in the United States where these lawsuits would happen, and worldwide the market share is much lower. And as you can see, everything else is an Android phone, and people have the choice whether to buy an Apple phone or an Android phone. And if they want more flexibility and little less restrictions, they can buy an Android phone and get their Kindle book delivered through their app as opposed to what Apple is doing. So I don't know if they have a lot of vulnerability here. There might be some, depending on what laws relate to control of platforms, but we've seen many examples in the past where a company can own a platform and take a licensing fee and do all the things that Apple is doing, provided there's adequate competition in the marketplace for consumers to go elsewhere. And that's certainly the case here. I know a lot of people who watch this channel have done that. They've gone away from Apple platforms to Android devices and others. So I'm not sure whether or not this monopoly thing is going to hold up, but at the moment, it looks like Apple is feeling very defensive about this.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters, the Four Guys with Quarters podcast, Tom Albrecht, Brian Parker, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.